Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. This is one child abuse survivor to another 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. It's 8 o'clock here in the morning, November the 15th, Monday morning. I'm happy to be here. I almost missed my show, so I had to reschedule it. Sorry about that. So I had to bump it up a couple hours, so that's why it's a little bit late today. I wanted to continue talking about some interesting information I found on anger management and how to deal with anger and just any kind of anger-related issue from a website, angerresources.com. And Friday we were looking at the impact of abuse on women, and I think that's what I want to continue looking at today. It's not a very long article, but it's very important to look at it. Dave Decker and Michael Obsatz are the creators of this website, and they also they're therapists, and they work in the field of anger management and domestic abuse and domestic violence and all kinds of stuff. So you can go to their website, www.angerresources.com, ANGERESOURCES, and you can check out their website. There's so much information on there. We won't cover it all. I just wanted to go through a few kind of related topics to what I've been going through my whole life regarding my anger issues and not being able to handle my anger properly, and I was stuffing my anger because I didn't want to hurt anybody, and I wanted to, I was trying to be nice, stuff my anger, and then I ended up very angry inside, internalized anger, and then didn't know how to deal with that either because I was kind of forcing me to want to self-injure. I didn't have any way to release it. So that's the thing. It's very important to get help with this stuff if you are experiencing it. I'm not a counselor or therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own shows, mainly to be another voice out here talking about the whole issues surrounding abuse and surrounding adult survivor issues. There's so many of us out here. It's sad and pathetic and true. Millions upon millions of us out here. And I just thought, hey, why not? I saw, other people doing some awesome stuff on Blog Talk Radio, and I thought, why not? I'll just do my own show. So it's almost been a year. Actually, next Monday will be one year that I started on Blog Talk Radio, and I didn't know how long I'd be doing it or how many shows I'd be doing, but it's turned out to be very helpful for me, and I hope it's helping other people as well. And I'm not a counselor or therapist. You have to listen at your own discretion. I talk about the whole issue surrounding abuse, and I don't minimize it and don't sugarcoat it. So my shows are very sensitive, and so if you feel like the topic or my show might bother you, you have to turn it off. It is your own discretion, so you have to listen at your own discretion. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my show. Get somebody to listen to the show with you who's older, like an adult who cares about what you're doing online, a parent. Hopefully you have someone in your life who does care what you're doing online. Have them listen to the show with you just to make sure you should be listening, because I don't know how young the people are who are listening to my shows. And ultimately it is about stopping child abuse and raising awareness regarding the issues surrounding child abuse. But there's a lot of adult content on my shows, so I just ask that young people under the age of 18 have permission to listen to all my shows. So, thanks very much. So we'll get right into this. This Friday we left off talking about the impact of abuse on women. That's from www.angerresources.com, Dave Decker. And Dave Decker was talking about the fact that not all of these effects would occur, in an abusive relationship, but some of them might. And so, this is some of the stuff that can happen to women specifically who have been abused. And Dave Decker and Michael Obsatz, they both know that men can be abused too and that women can be abusers, right? So they're just specifically wanted to show what happens to a woman when she's in an abusive relationship. Right, so I just wanted to run through this because I know completely how, just taking a look at my mom and her situation, my sister and her situation, a friend of mine and her situation, another friend of mine and her situation. And I know a lot of people who have been abused in domestic violence situations, and a lot of, mainly women, but some men too. There was a majority were women, but there were some men in there too. So it's absolutely horrific what people do. I keep saying that on every show, but I'll just keep saying it because it's absolutely ridiculous that people think it's okay to treat people this way. And that's why I'm speaking out, and I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not easily intimidated, and I felt like, why not be a voice, right? I was more uncomfortable being abused than I am talking about it, and so I thought, why not just be another voice for people who may be experiencing or have experienced this stuff, right? But it is absolutely pathetic what it does to people, and just seeing it firsthand, I know what people go through in this situation, right? And Dave Decker, he's talking about that it causes a lot of fear. It can cause a lot of fear. It can cause a lot of depression, anxiety, panic attacks, shame, defectiveness, inadequacy, incompetence, and guilt, frustration, anger, irritability, defensiveness, rebelliousness, being edgy, appearing hysterical, out of control, being disrespectful and abusive herself. This would be a woman who's in an abusive situation, right? Trying to hurt or kill herself or her partner, and all types of things. And he just goes on and on to list them there. And we went over the fear part, that there's many reasons that would cause fear, like that if for instance, speaking up for herself with her partner or others, losing her economic security or home, right, her lifestyle, her fears about being left alone, fears about the unknown, right, fears about what other people might think about her because she's in an abusive relationship, right, it's about her staying with someone who is abusive, right, fear about, if there's children in the home, fear concerning the children and that the children will become abusers or victims themselves, fear of losing her ability to work on the job, right? Fear of becoming emotionally unstable or going crazy. Fear of being physically injured or killed. These are real, honest-to-God fears that lots and lots of people go through, and it's absolutely horrible. Fear of her partner hurting or killing himself or others that she loves, right? Depression's another issue, and low self-esteem, insecurity, self-doubt, negativity, lack of self-confidence, feelings of worthlessness, loss of personal power. And that's a huge issue for people who have been abused, who are in domestic violence situations, even domestic abuse, it doesn't even have to be any physical abuse present, you know what I mean? If there's emotional abuse and psychological abuse going on, then people, it's hard on the other person, who's the victim of that, you know what I mean? It doesn't even have to be physical abuse. A lot of people think, well, there was no physical abuse, so it's not abuse. That's just not true at all. Some people can ruin another person's life just by being psychologically and emotionally abusive to them and cause them to, be depressed and down, and that's abuse. I don't know. Lots of people don't really know what abuse is, and that's why it's important for people to get the education and know what all the different types of abuse are, and then make sure the people in your life and yourself are not being abused, right? Because some people just grow up like this. They think, it's not abuse, but when it actually is. And the thing is you don't want your kids to have to go through that if you have children in the home. And, you want to protect your children, right? And also for yourself. You do count, you do matter. My mom never thought she counted or mattered, and so she would, I think her whole issue, the abuse that she put on all of us and my dad and everybody, was the fact that she was abused as a child, and she really felt that she didn't count there in her own family. Then she married my dad and was in this horrible relationship and felt that she didn't count there either. And so it really, it killed her inside. It killed her spiritually. It brought her to the brinks of the pits of hell, and she stayed there. She could never bring herself out, but she wanted so badly for people to treat her right, you know what I mean? And so it had kind of stemmed from her childhood. So she was not treated properly as a child, and then moved into this marriage with this man who was not treating her right or her children. And so she became abusive because she was she was at her wit's end. Like she literally had gone crazy because of what my dad had done to her and what her own mother had done to her. So this is the thing. It's horrible what happens to people. I've seen this in other people. I've actually seen this in other people's families, like friends of mine's grandparents, for instance, back from the old days, like my parents, right, born in the 20s and born in the 30s, and their lives were just so completely pathetic and miserable that they just continued on that way, and they lived the rest of their lives that way, and they're just miserable people. And you don't necessarily want to hang around with them because they're not fun. And they're abusive, right? So who wants to hang around with abusive people? I know I don't. And so it just gets old after a while, listening to people berate each other and throw things at each other and hurt each other on purpose just to see if they can actually upset the other person and really get them pissed off. And it's like, starting fights and all this stuff. I mean, lots of people do it. It's absolutely unhealthy. It's not right to do to somebody. And, if you're doing that, you want to stop that behavior. And you want to get control, because, anger, obviously, it's normal and natural. But we're talking about abuse here, which is to abuse somebody because of your anger. Anger is normal and natural, and we do have to get angry. It's a sign that something's wrong. But you don't have to become abusive about it. And you don't have to hurt somebody because of it or hurt yourself, and that's the whole issue. And so that's what, I watched my parents with these anger management problems, and, I took them on too, right? But I can see where all this stuff is coming from, the depression, the anxiety, panic attacks, experiencing an overwhelming sense of apprehension and dread and feeling unsafe much of the time, becoming fearful about doing normal day-to-day activities such as driving, shopping, leaving the house at all, right? Anxiety and panic attacks. Shame, defectiveness, inadequacy, incompetence about being abused and disrespected by a partner who says he loves her, which can lead to many of the other effects listed here. And that's kind of where we left off Friday. My parents never told them each other that they loved each other, not after I was born. Now, maybe sometime before I was born they might have. But honest to God, they did not ever hold hands. They never hugged. They never sat in the same room, because the problem being that if they were in the same room, there'd be a fight break out. So they didn't hang out together, right? My mom would actually serve up my dad's dinner, but there'd be no talking at the table. And my dad would eat by himself. All the kids would eat by ourselves. You know what I mean? And so we never ate as a family. And my mom would actually sit across the table from my dad, but the thing is it quite often got violent. Somebody would end up throwing their food at the other one, and this would happen in restaurants as well, so it was quite embarrassing to go out to eat with them. And, they were just, very ignorant people. But the thing is, they were always trying to hurt each other, and they would not give up. They were relentless about it. They were just, that's why, I seriously think, when they were court ordered by the judges to go get counseling, to go get counseling for their marriage, for their marital problems, for the abuse that they had inflicted upon their children, and for their own issues, because my dad was borderline schizophrenic and who knows what else, and my mom was manic depressive. They didn't want to change. They wanted to be able to sit across the table from each other and berate each other and call each other names and hurt each other. That was their life. That's all they knew how to do. And that's the sad part, because they brought their kids up in hell and then thought it was perfectly okay to do it. And even my dad, living today, thinks it was just fine. It was great, right? It was wonderful. And he just applauds my grandmother, my mom's mom, for even though she killed her own son and abused her own children, he thinks she's just a wonderful woman. And he says, oh, well, that's how it was back in the old days, right? And I said, no, Grandma killed her own son, Dad. Literally killed him. And beat these orphans, and they left. They took off. They went down the road to take their chances on the road, and beat her own children. She was a horrible woman. Here's my dad sticking up for this woman, saying, "Oh well, that's okay. That's the way it was back in those days." See, it's all they know. You know what I mean? These people that are so incredibly sick and they were court ordered to go get counseling, and they skirted around it because that's how, manipulative they both were. So that's the whole issue, right? People can get away with this stuff. And it's absolutely ridiculous that people would want to spend their lives doing that to each other and forcing their children to be in on it. And we have a whole society out here saying, oh, well, that's okay. No, it's not. It is not okay. There's not one thing about it that's okay. And so if you're going through this and you realize that, hey, oh my God, I'm being abused, you need to get some help. And make sure you do whatever you can. It's ultimately your decision. But if you have children in it and you know about the abuse and they're being abused, I'm telling you, it's the law. You have to do the right thing. And you should want to, right? You should want to. You shouldn't want to bring your children up in hell. You know what I mean? And it's just pathetic. I had some friends who actually grew up in normal homes, not very many, but I did have a couple, and I thought, my God, it must be so nice for them to wake up and their parents actually want them. They actually want them in the home, and they actually love their children. Oh, my God, what that must be like. You know what I mean? That their parents would say, I love you so much, and, is there anything that you need? Can I get you anything? Or, oh, my God, I can't even imagine that. My parents were not doing that for us. Let me tell you that. It was I don't care what you need, and, you can just shut up or I'm going to beat your ass. You know what I mean? So that's how I grew up. And my parents thought it was great. No problem. Then at the end of the day, my mom's sitting around crying the blues. Oh, poor me. Woe is me. This never, I didn't deserve this life, and I've ended up with all these horrible children and a husband that hates me and a husband that I hate and I can't get along with. And it's you have a choice, woman. And we told her, years and years before, my older siblings actually told her, you have a choice to get out of this marriage. You do not have to stay, especially in the 70s, they were telling her, because I remember this, to get out, right? Get out. and get herself a good life, and who cares about the kids? You know, we were like, hey, if you don't want to take us with you, no sweat. We'll stay and deal with Dad, take our chances, whatever. But the whole issue is you need to get out, right? And she wouldn't do it. No, she preferred to sit around and then cry the blues, right? And then play the pity party after spending all those years where she could have gotten out. See, and people after a while will not side with you anymore because they get tired of it. They're just like, look, you had the opportunity to go, but you can't make up your mind, and, you know, you're suffering basically because you're staying. And there's no, you know, you almost have to say, well, it's your responsibility to get yourself out. If you're not going to get yourself out, how many times can we listen to the sob story of how much a victim you are? Right? And that was my mom. She was a victim. She was a victim her whole life. Whole fact is she had the opportunity on any given day to get herself out and get her children out, She should have wanted to, just for us. She should have wanted to take the small ones. I would have took us all because my dad was very sick and abusive to all of us. But the thing is, I wouldn't have wanted to leave my brothers there, you know, to fend for themselves. But the thing is, she should have took us all, you know, and got out. But instead of that, you know, oh no, I'm just going to stay in this horrible marriage, and at the end of the day, I should kill myself. It's, you know, my life sucks, crying the blues, right? Well, she was manic depressive, right? She had an illness, a real, honest to God sickness and illness that was not being treated. And, you know, to bring your kids up like that and then just assume that everybody should just be happy with it and okay with it, you know, it's so frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating to see this, that people will allow themselves to be abused like this. You know, there's absolutely no reason for it. No one deserves to be abused like this. And I don't care if it's a woman, a man, a child. Children don't have a choice. You know, little 2-year-old toddlers can't get up and walk out the door and call the police, right? But adults can, and that's why I have a whole lot less sympathy for adults than I do for children, because children cannot protect themselves. They can't. There's not much they can do. And if they're being brought up in this home where they're fighting for the love of their parents, even though there's abuse going on, which I know does happen, you know, they may not want to be removed from their home, and quite often they don't, right? Because they love their parents. Sadly and sickly enough that a kid would love their parents who's hurting them and abusing them, but that's my case, right? And you know, that's just the whole issue. The kids can't help it. They have no choice. But here's these people, these adults, who do have a choice. And sometimes they think, well, what about my children? Well, you know what? You got to get yourself to safety too, or you will be no good for that child whatsoever. So start checking out the information online. There's some really good information. And I would say best thing to do would be to talk to a DV counselor, domestic violence counselor, or domestic abuse counselor, somebody like that and if you don't get the right answers for yourself, talking to one, go to another one. You don't have to just stick with the same one. You know, if you have more than one and those resources available, not everybody does, that's for sure. In certain, you know, small townships and just small areas where there isn't those types of access to those types of services. But I would say then you just phone the 1-800 numbers on the domestic violence, you know, so the Coalition Against Domestic Violence websites, right? And get some advice on what to do, right? Because, I mean, I would love to see my mom leave my dad, and I would have really loved to see her take us with her. And then she could have had a nice life, and we would have been able to probably all start our healing journey a lot sooner. You know what I mean? And I venture to say 2 of my brothers would still be alive. The one who was murdered, no, because he was murdered. But the other 2 who took their own lives, I venture to say they would probably still be here. And, you know, that we could have healed. We could have healed as a family instead of just being completely ripped apart. So abuse, that's what abuse does. It completely rips people apart, piece by piece. And I mean, my God, if you're going through this right now, you make sure you get some help. Because I know I've seen the very worst side of humanity. And people would say, well, I think, you know, somebody like Hitler would have been the worst side. Well, my parents, you know, if they would have had a gun walking around like a Gestapo, then you could class them as Hitlers because they were just as evil-minded. And it's just like, you know, it's very, very sad what people do. And then I think you think about my grandmother who did what she did to her own son and to her family and a bunch of orphans, right? She was a horrible woman. And, I mean, you know, how could you be like that? How could you do that to your family? She reminded me more of Hitler than my own mom did, for sure. But I mean, I think my grandma was German, and but anyway, I have nothing against the German people. I actually like the German language, and I like Germany. The issue is I have something against sick people who would do sick things and hurt people all for their own self-satisfaction. It's that whole sadistic stuff, you know, and that's what my parents were. They were sadistic. They would hurt each other and then laugh and think it was great. You know, my mom would hurt me and then go sit down at the table with a smile on her face. Like, she would beat on me and then go sit at the table and smoke a cigarette, and she'd be so happy. You know, she'd be like, oh, this is good, I got her, you know what I mean? And I'm like, you bitch. You know, how could you do that? Right? Well, this is how serious this stuff is. Because parents out there are killing their children. You know what I mean? And they're laughing. They're sitting behind cell bars, sitting there laughing because they think it's funny. And here's this child who's dead, you know. And there's men out there beating on their wives and girlfriends thinking it's funny, laughing. They're sick. They're incredibly sick, right? Well, my parents were very, very sick. And so if you've been in this situation, make sure you get some help so that you do not pass this stuff on, right? Because that's the whole issue. This is very much a learned behavior. This is very much something that somebody usually experiences and takes on as a behavior. And so, you know, if you've been through this, then, you know, you don't want to be passing this on to your own children or you know, to your own partner, right? I mean, it's absolutely horrific what people do. It says guilt about her feeling responsible for her partner and his problems, including his abuse toward her, and not being able to change him through what she says and does. About the negative and damaging impact of the abuse on the children, guilt, right? My mom didn't have any guilt, like, as far as that went, right? She did not try to save us from our dad, and my dad did not try to save us from our mom. Now, they both were not together abusing us. Like, I've seen and heard stories where parents will abuse a child together and they both take turns. Like, I think that's just so absolutely the height of disgustingness. The most low-life thing I can think of possibly in the world would be two parents doing that. One parent bad enough, being stupid, but two at the same time is sick, and they both, I think they should just be sent away for life or whatever. Back in the old days, they would have just strung them up, but nowadays we can't do that. So, you know, sadly enough. But the thing is that, you know, yeah, a lot of times parents don't feel guilty. You know, my parents didn't feel guilty for what they did to each other. They did not feel guilty for what they did to us, right? And they would never, ever take on that role of, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, they never said sorry. I think one time, after my mom nearly broke my nose, she was crying in the bedroom, because I remember this, right? Because I was in the bathroom, my nose was bleeding, and she had beaten the crap out of me. And I remember hearing her kind of sobbing, saying she would never do that again. But she wasn't telling me that. She was just telling, I don't know who she was telling, somebody else who was in the bedroom talking to her. And so she never told me that, and she actually never told me personally that she was sorry. I don't think that she was, right? And so that's the whole issue. You know, she knew what she was doing, right? Frustration, anger, irritability, defensiveness, rebelliousness, being edgy about being told who to be, what to feel, what to think, and what to do. Now, this is, you know, if a woman's being abused, being told who they are, who they should be, how to feel, right, what to think, not being allowed to be their own person, not being allowed to have their own thoughts and feelings, right? Very much stressful on a person, right? Appearing hysterical and out of control, irrational. A woman being abused might go through crying spells, yelling and screaming herself, right? And I mean, I've seen all that, right? From friends too, like friends of mine who were in these abusive relationships with their boyfriends and whatnot, it would just be from one thing to the next, just almost seeming to be irrational behavior, you know, crying spells and then screaming and then threatening to kill themselves. Well, my mom was kind of like that too, because she was often mad, and then she would be wanting to kill herself, and then she wanted to kill me. So she would just sort of change it as the mood kind of changed, right, throughout the day or throughout the night, whatever. But I've seen that other people do this stuff too. Being disrespectful and abusive herself toward partner, children, and others, and that's what can happen to a woman who's been abused, right? They can take that on themselves, and all of a sudden then become, because they're lashing out, they're saying, look, I'm hurting. Now look what you've done. They'll say, you know, okay, I'm abused. Look at me. I've been abused by my husband or my partner, whoever, and look at me. I'm a victim, and they lash out at either their partner or their children or both or all. And I mean, this is what my parents did. Exactly. That's exactly what happened. I don't think they started out wanting to just set themselves up to be child abusers. It's not like they got married and said, hey, let's just be child abusers. Okay. You know, it wasn't like that. it took a whole lot of damage to cause them to do what they did to their children and to themselves. It took a whole lot of abuse, right? And so that's the whole thing. They didn't start out saying, "Oh, what do you want to do when you get older?" "Oh, I don't know. I think I'll be a child abuser." No, they didn't set out to be that way, right? But they would not stop themselves. So they were I don't know if it was just some weird thing that they were unable to stop themselves from lashing out at their family, or it's just that they wanted to hurt other people because they were hurting. And I think that's what it was. Excuse me, my voice is going. Yeah, so I think I think that's what a lot of people who have been abused do. They want other people to feel their pain. So they lash out at other people, Quite often, a lot of survivors will just lash out at themselves and self-sabotage and self-injure, which is what I was wanting to, and I did a little bit of it. But the thing is, I had more suicidal tendencies than anything, right? Because my parents were always talking about suicide, trying to commit suicide. My brother committed suicide. Well, actually, two of them really did. And so suicide was just part of the answer in my family. And then I'm so glad that I realized it's not the answer. And I'm glad to be on this side of this whole thing, let me tell you that. And I hope that you will get there too if you're experiencing this stuff as well. But yeah, I think, that's what it is, because I did the same thing. I was angry at my parents and the fact that what they had done and how, what they had done to destroy this family that I belonged to, or sort of thought I belonged to, and what they did to me personally. You know what I mean? I was very angry. And so I would lash out at other people. And even in my own relationships with guys that I was dating or seeing, I was like, I'll hurt them before they hurt me, guaranteed, because I just couldn't take any more abuse. So I was the one to lash out, and so I had to learn how to get that under control. And in doing so, I stuffed a lot of it without learning how to be assertive instead of abusive, right? And so my parents, if they would have had counseling and they would have gone and got the help that they were supposed to get, they would have been able to work through their issues. My mom would have been able to work through her abuse issues. My dad as well, because I know he was abused. We just don't. The secrets, boy, they're tight-lipped, right? Their whole family's very tight-lipped about what happened in their family, and I think there was a lot of abuse, and I think there was some sexual abuse as well. And I say that because I've heard a few things that just make me go, do you know what I mean? And so he's not talking. But I know my mom was very open about her situation with her mother. She would talk a lot about the whole fact, and her siblings. I went and actually saw them, and they were talking about their mother and the abuse that she put on them and these orphans, and it was just horrible. And so, if my parents would have got help for their abuse issues and also got some marital counseling, right, like they were supposed to, and got their own issues under control, like the manic depression and also the borderline schizophrenia, they could have raised a really cool family. They could have raised this family that was just awesome, But instead of that, the buggers decided that they'd rather live in hell. And they created that, and they made that decision for us. They just said, hey, well, we want to live in hell, so I guess that means the kids are going to too, right? That was a conscious decision. They were ordered to go get counseling, and they refused to do it. Well, they went twice, made it look good, right, and then skirted around, moved, and then we moved out of the country, right? They were very smart. They wanted to continue living like a bunch of heathen, And it's like, why? Why would anybody want to live like that? I can't figure it out myself. Because I tell you, I have a partner, and we've been together for 15 years, and we have an awesome relationship. And he is so good to me, and I am so good to him. And he loves me, and I love him, and we treat each other so well. We are best friends. And, he can tell me anything, and I can tell him anything, and we are there for each other, man. Thick and thin. He's dying, and I'm there. You know what I mean? If I was dying, I know that he would be there for me. So he's terminally ill, and I'm standing by his side. And, he's a really good man, and I would hope that whoever you have in your life, you know what I mean, your partner, your friend, whoever you're with, that they should be treating you right. So make sure that you're not in one of these situations, with domestic violence, domestic abuse. Do not allow yourself to be abused, ever. Set some boundaries and set some some rules, so that you won't allow yourself to be abused. And learn how to do it by going on these websites. I have tons and tons of information if you guys are interested and don't know really where to find it. I can get you some information. So, if you need something, get a hold of me on Blog Talk Radio or Facebook and whatnot. But whatever you do, just keep reaching out and keep talking and getting help and keep looking for that help where you can find it, And, really, honestly, you do deserve to have a good life. Probably, maybe nobody said that to you, but it's very true. And you're really the only one who can responsibly get that for yourself. really the only one who can do that. So make sure that you do, take care of yourself, right? So have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you tonight. I'll be back on my shows and also Dreamcatchers Talk Radio. We have a guest coming on, Annie O'Sullivan. Can You Hear Me Now? She's an author and a survivor, Annie O'Sullivan. She'll be on 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here on Blog Talk Radio, and with Elizabeth Brawley and myself, and then I'll be back on my show after that. And then tomorrow morning, one child to be a survivor to another, probably same time, 8 o'clock, because I'm trying to sleep in a little bit. And this morning, I almost missed my show, so I actually did. Then I had to reschedule, so sorry about that, everybody. And so then I'll be back on tomorrow morning. We'll kind of finish taking a look at this and go into another section, and then we'll go from there. So have a great day, everybody. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.